What is your IQ measurement? Are IQ tests useful? Our brothers have engaged in religious ecstasy, and the majority of them speak in tongues. Yet our IQ as a race is very, very low. Almost all modern IQ tests have been done, and we are found wanting. Actually, to the shock of many of our intellectuals, our IQ is averaging 70 to 80, which is mental disability range. This is a very serious video, and this is a very serious scientific observation that we need to deal with thoroughly and clearly. Let's consider this from a number of our thoughts. The title we are going to discuss today is Black Africans Can Boost Their IQ Scores with an Overriding Stride. Do we really have to worry about our low IQ? They tell us that the negro skull, in addition to having a smaller brain volume and thicker cranial bones than that of the white, is prognathous, like that. Profile of Negro, European, and orangutani. So they say they are literally saying we are animals. The lower face projects forwards in the manner of an animal muzzle. The negro jaw is substantially longer relative to its width than the white jaw. A feature of the negro lower jaw is its retention of a vestige of the simian shelf. That's another bone under our lower jaw, a bone region immediately behind the incisors. The simian shelf is a distinguishing feature or characteristics of apes, and it is absent in whites. A number of factors comes out here. One, the simian shelf is not found in humans. It has only been found in animals. So that is a scientific lie, a total lie projected and propagandized by racists who would never tell you that they are lying. Scientific racism, intellectually driven racism by so-called thinkers of other races, is totally biased. Do we really carry a low IQ? One of those so-called founders or discoverers of the DNA molecule, the Nobel Prize winner James Watson, was stripped of his title after suggesting that genes make black people less intelligent. James Watson, the 1962 Nobel laureate, created a huge stir because when he implied that blacks were genetically inferior to whites, he raised a lot of dust. Was he correct? Was he wrong? Our actions as black people, as Africans, as Bantus, as melanin dominant humans, can they disprove him? Another one, a European scholar, calls us dumb. Why? What have we done to disprove them? In a 1969 article in the Harvard Educational Review, Arthur Jensen, a psychologist at the University of California, Berkeley, maintained that a 15-point difference in IQ between blacks and whites was mostly due to a genetic difference between the races. Listen to the following. That could never be erased. Was he being a racist or telling the truth? The fact we have already seen that we should never at any given time take the words of European scientists or any scientist by that name of any race, creed or color, and they say they are telling the truth. Whether they are doctors, professors, or they've done a lot of stuff, let us always never ever take their word for granted as absolute truth. Genetically dull. This is what Richard H. Henson and Charles Murray, in their book that caused a lot of dust around 1994. I was still asleep during that time. And recently, Selatin, in a series of articles on Slate, also wrote and published similar assertions that we are wired to be dumb genetically. Do we need to disprove these scholars, or we must just ignore them? What is your thinking? What is your decision? How do you approach such very critical topics? This is the book, a biased and racially motivated interpretation. It is clear now that we know that we are not genetically dumb. for all the shock value of its assertion that blacks are intractably and probably biologically inferior in intelligence to whites and Asians, the bell curve is not quite an original research. So these guys, they didn't do any research. They went to primary papers and other people's research and engaged in interpretation of that source. The interpretation of those data, however, is very much in dispute. So too are the author's conclusions that little or nothing can or should be done to raise the ability of the IQ are impaired, since so much of their lower intelligence is due to heredity, which is an error or which is wrong, that we are going to prove shortly. How do we answer this assertion? Scholars have poked holes in their biased interpretation, but the prejudice persists, and Africans, by our way of behavior, Bantus, melanin dominant people, our disunity, our infighting, our distrust of each other, and the way we cheat each other seem to fit the IQ description that these scholars give. Where to now? Where to now? It is quite clear. There is no argument that our people and our race has also contributed a lot in this modern technology, from the aeroplane to the car to electricity to equipment based on this dirty electricity that we are using. Black Africans have had a lot of input. The bike frame, this is all there it is. The guitar was invented by the black person, Robert Fleming. All of this sugar refinement, stake climbing, helicopter, Paul E. Williams, guided missile, Otis Boykin, a lot. I can say over 70% of modern inventions were invented by black people. How could I say that? And where can I stand? If someone takes me on this, how can I prove it? I'll give him this list first. And this is a partial list of modern black inventors. And then I'll give him 2 more examples to shut him out. That black people inherited the greatest genetic gift based on melanin. Even honest scholars like Constantine Devon and Champollion wrote that just to think that this race of black men today, our slave and the object of our scorn, is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, and even the use of the speech. The use of speech. He wrote this in 1787 after seeing the Sphinx in Africa. And that's what he said. Just look at the Sphinx and all these primitive ideas that we are backward, every racist, you just throw them in the garbage bin and throw them away because they are lying. Totally lying. But if they were to say these people have fallen from a higher level and we have managed to defeat them, then that statement will cause us to think. Here is another one. One of the greatest military strategists and politicians and rulers on earth, Ramesses II. As we know that Europeans want to claim that ancient Egypt is their civilization, would you do this to your own ancestor? Even the Arabs that are in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Algeria, in Libya, all over so-called Middle East, which is North Africa, they are same people, they are Europeans. Look at what he's doing here. And this is what Europeans think of our ancient inheritance. Therefore, they will not tell you that you come from a great people. They will not tell us that we are descendants of the greatest people to ever walk the earth. They will tell you that you are a Hebrew Israelite, the Egyptians oppressed you, and then you go sing, you criticize the ancient Egyptians, you ignore their teachings, you ignore anything that they did, and you hold on to the Khazarian belief, thinking that you are a Hebrew Israelite and that you are Israelite, I'm Jewish, and so forth, yet not knowing that the proper and original Hebrew Israelite should be an Egyptian. Straightforward, without any doubt about that. Why we must never trust any IQ test. This is the foundation I've already given it. They lie. British psychometrician Charles Spearman, in a famous 1904 article called The General Factor, where you get the G, which is used to calculate as the base for your intelligent quotient calculation, said that most psychometrics consider intelligence to be a substantially inherited, biologically grounded trait, which we have shown and proved that it's a lie. But even then, at that time, it was opposed. There were three main facts against it. The first was that the test measured cultural conditioning rather than biological traits. Number two, that it was a misnomer to say that G represents a single human ability more than all others. There are so many intelligences, maybe 9 or 10 intelligences. And the last, IQ test could be misused to misinform millions of young people or a race or a group of people that they are mentally inferior. This is what has happened. Now, let's give an example during that time why this was doubted and it was supposed to be thrown away. Example number one. The main findings of American intelligence testing in Briam's day was that immigrants were less intelligent than native-born Americans, with the most recent crop of immigrants at that time being the least intelligent ever. The highest scoring group who were dumb at that time were the Jews. Yet in 1923, these Jews, American Jews, were recent migrants. Therefore, they could not speak English. They didn't understand anything American. So Briam reported that our figures would rather tend to disprove the popular belief that the Jew is highly intelligent. So 1923, they said the Jews they are dumb. But look at what has happened since 1923 to today. Most of the few inventions that we say prominent were done by the Jews. Although we know, and personally we know where they got most of that information from. Hemet. Yes? One more example, the evidence that brain size is correlated with intelligence, as we alluded in and that blacks have smaller brains than whites, is a misuse of IQ interpretation. The brain size difference between men and women is substantially greater than that between blacks and whites, yet men and women score the same on average on an IQ test. So it's a lie. It's a total fabrication, prodding our own efforts to move forward. Despite all this, we ought to analyze all this dispassionately and objectively so that we know how we can think like our ancestors and at the same time master the abilities to boost our IQ in the current present moment. Why? Because it appears that blacks have lower IQs than East Asians and Europeans. We must practically debunk the race and IQ correlation propaganda. Let's look into it because it is an important question whose answer holds the extinction or survival of our race, especially during these days when we are facing the current pandemic as well as the vaccination policies that will be rolled out all over the earth. We need to think and make very clear-cut decisions that no one tampers with our DNA, our bloodline, and our being. That no chemical shall do that. That no food shall do that. Now, they will say these are compelling results. That black people's IQ is between 70 and 84, borderline mental disability. This is a lie. This is called race science. We have already seen that the environment we come from, oppression, enslavement, racial prejudice. We've already seen what Count Devon said, that we have oppressed these people and we have destroyed these civilizations, and these are the people that came from our ancestors. So we missed the step in our history in the last 3,000 years. And remember, our history does not begin 6,000 years ago as Hebrew Israelites, Christians, Jews, and Muslims try to tell. Our history begins 2.5 billion years ago. More than that. So we are not a very young race on this planet. So what are the practical strategies that we can use to improve our racial and individual IQs today? This is very critical and very important. This is the answer to everything. I could have said this alone and stopped, and this video would be awesome. But I wanted to add more flesh to it to come to the fruit that I wanted to deliver today. Now, first step is that we need to create a race-conducive environment that enables us to achieve simultaneously two goals. One, to think like our ancient ancestors. How do we do that? By learning our true history and then believing the evidence that they left. So this is where Marifato and Hamiti Buru ethics is thriving. If you want to learn your true history as a Muntu, as a Bantu, join our forces, join our email, and watch our videos, engage us in our WhatsApp groups, and maybe shortly in our Telegram group. We will be moving shortly. So quickly send us an email so that you can get connected. That's the first step. Without that step, you can get all the PhDs you want. You can get all the masters you want. You can learn all the subjects that are there on the earth. But you have missed the first mark, and your direction of life is into Euro-Gentile philosophy and metaphysics. You are lost. And at the same time, we must master European or Asian technologies and strive to surpass them by light years. So we must do mathematics, geometry, physics, software engineering. We must be into it to the depth of our height, as long as we have mastered our true history. If you have not mastered your true history and you go into it, you are a slave. Now, these two actions will boost our IQ no matter what. So when you go for the IQ test, you'll be flying through them and slicing them like hot knife in butter. The next step is we must read vociferously, voluminously, and we must never stop reading. And if you can't read, listen to ebooks. Listen to those books. They have audio books. We must learn to play various logic games instead of small useless games. Learn games that boost your thinking. Write stories, write down new games and puzzles, and solve many puzzles as possible. Learn something new every year. Write it down that this year I want to learn this. I want to learn to play the guitar. I want to learn to play the mbila. I want to learn hieroglyphics. I want to learn a Bantu language. Do that. You must fast regularly. Don't just continuously be a person that eats food. Get a time where you fast. You must train your brain to focus. Sit down and focus. Shut all the noise and focus. And when you start to focus, bring in one of the divinities in your mental screen and let that divinity sit there and focus using that divinity. I've heard a lot of people say they meditate and they do yoga, black people. But they are told by those people that train them that focus on an apple, focus on a little dot. Yet you've got ancestors that use the imagination more than any race on earth. The next one is master Bantu metaphysics. The power behind your ability to connect to the genius of our ancestors on this world is to apply the knowledge that they left as Bantu metaphysics or mysteries. And finally, but not least, get enough deep sleep in which your dreams are vivid, not hazy. So when you wake up and you don't remember your dreams, you were not sleeping properly. You need to contact us and we discuss that with you so that we can share our knowledge and systems so that you can be able to dream properly, to connect to our ancestors. Now, if you are interested in all what we are doing and everything that we have been doing, send us an email on john@marifado.com and specify really the actual thing that you want us to connect you with or to share. Subscribe to our channel. This is Kamiti Iburu Ethics Marifado. Priest Teacher Rabbi LM Dumizulu saying till we meet again, remember you have the potential of a genius. Have a good day. Enkos Tatenta Siabunga Edupe.